Now our next topic is fever in immunocompromised patients. To chair the session, I would like to invite Dr. Madhu Poddar. She is a leading physician in Ghaziabad, actively involved in other social commitments also. And Dr. Pravesh Gupta, he is also a senior consultant physician in Ghaziabad. I would like the chairpersons to kindly introduce our speaker.
हेलो, फिर से नमस्कार। जैसे कि अभी टॉपिक बोला गया है कि फीवर इन इम्यूनो कम्प्रोमाइज्ड पेशेंट्स। इम्यूनिटी क्या है आप सबको पता है। इम्यूनिटी वो सैनिक हैं जो हमारी बॉडी में आने वाले दुश्मन से लड़ते हैं, दुश्मन को प्रवेश करने से रोकते हैं, और अगर दुश्मन प्रवेश कर जाता है तो उसके साथ लड़ाई करके उसको हमारे शरीर को बीमार होने से रोकते हैं। इम्यूनो कम्प्रोमाइज्ड, इम्यून बॉडीज़ का कम हो जाना, हमारी इम्यूनिटी का कम हो जाना, और अगर इम्यूनिटी कम होगी तो कोई भी बीमारी हमें हो सकती है, चाहे वो वायरल इन्फेक्शन है, बैक्टीरियल इन्फेक्शंस हैं, या कोई भी बीमारी। और जब ये बीमारियां होंगी तो फीवर होगा। तो इसी चीज़ को एलोबरेट करने के लिए आज हमारे साथ है डॉक्टर पीयूष जैन, जो मैंने अभी पहले अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी का एग्जाम्पल दिया था, तो जब इन्होंने मुझे लिख के दिया तो ये भी हंस रहे थे, डॉक्टर पीयूष जैन भी, और मुझे भी हंसी आई, क्योंकि डॉक्टर पीयूष जैन प्रोफेसर ऑफ मेडिसिन है अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ मेडिकल साइंस और राम मनोहर लोहिया हॉस्पिटल में। और बाकी इनके बारे में डॉक्टर मधु सक्सेना अवार्ड फॉर द बेस्ट आउटगोइंग पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट मेडिसिन, ICMR इंटरनेशनल ट्रैवल ग्रांट फॉर ESH 2013 मिलान, श्रीमती पवन कुमारी जैन अवार्ड बाय API दिल्ली स्टेट चैप्टर 2016, श्री वेंकटेश्वरा कार्डियक रिसर्च मेडल 2016 बाय इंडियन सोसाइटी फॉर एथेरोस्क्लेरोसिस रिसर्च फॉर बेस्ट पेपर, फाइनेंस सेक्रेटरी बोर्ड ऑफ मैनेजमेंट दिल्ली डायबिटिक फोरम, rheumatology clinic at Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital, various publications in national and international journals and textbooks, reviewer for national journals. There are too many, and now I will request Dr. Piyush Jain to speak on fever in immunocompromised patients. Dr. Piyush Jain.
Okay. तो जैसा कि मैम ने बताया, फीवर इन इम्यूनो कॉम्प्रोमाइज, जिसके अंदर इम्यून शक्ति कम हो गई है, उसमें फीवर का क्या रोल है और उसमें फीवर को कैसे डायग्नोज करना है। So, immunocompromised host is a person who has decreased ability to respond to the normal infection. और क्या क्या कंडीशन में इम्यून डेफिशिएंसी होती है? There are some congenital syndromes where the immune system is deficient right from the birth, and then there are acquired syndromes like after trauma. There are autoimmune disorders like SLE, vasculitis, infections. We all know about HIV, and then even sepsis can have decreased immune system. Various malignancies will lead to immune deficiencies. Malnutrition itself can lead to immune deficiencies. Various drugs like corticosteroids or immunosuppressants like azathioprine, cyclosporin given for various indications will again lead to immunosuppression. Asplenic patients, either splenectomy due to some indication or even autosplenectomy like in sickle cell crisis, these patients will have less power to combat the infection. Then diabetes mellitus, organ transplant patients which will be on various immunosuppressants and then marrow diseases, all of these and there many more will have immunocompromised nature. So what is so unusual about the fever in immunocompromised? We have been talking about the patients, fever in different patients, but in immunocompromised patients, the usual organisms as found in normal immunocompetent patients, they can be the pathogens. But sometimes the normal commensals, which are not infective in a person with healthy immunity, these normal commensals also become pathologic in the immunocompromised people. Then there are some rare and atypical organisms which are not very commonly seen in the immunocompetent. They will become pathologic and they will cause various disorders in immunocompromised patients. And then, as the previous speaker was talking about, we don't have only the infectious causes. There can be various non-infectious causes like drugs, inflammatory disorders and malignancies which can cause fever in immunocompromised patients. So what is different? Like if a person with a normal immunity comes with fever, he might be having some localizing signs, he might be having cough, he might be having dyspnea, hemoptysis, which will point out, which will help us in localization that this might be some respiratory involvement or it may be a case of pneumonia. But when the immune system is weak, when the immunity is not well developed, the fever may be the only manifestation. The other symptoms of the organ involvement may not be very well manifested. There may be just fever, and in many cases even the fever may not be there. The infection may be there, but the fever may not be very high grade, or fever may not be very clinically manifesting. So it is difficult to localize the infection as typical symptoms may not be present. There is masking of symptoms. Even the patterns we have right from our undergraduate days, we have been learning patterns of fever. In this type of fever, we will have that type of pattern. These patterns of fever may not be present, and some certain atypical features may be present. So that's why it is difficult to diagnose infection in the immunocompromised patients, and we have to keep a high index of suspicion. If we keep a high index of suspicion, then only we will be able to think that the person might be having some severe infection, and we have to diagnose and treat him properly. So there are common opportunistic infections, like in respiratory we can having mycobacterial, aspergillosis, nocardia, PCP, CMV. GI also CMV colitis, candidiasis. CNS we have toxoplasmosis, cryptococcosis, viral encephalitis, eye CMV retinitis, candidiasis. So whole list is there of various atypical opportunistic infection. You must appreciate that these infections may not be very common in an immunocompetent person, but in immunocompromised, these may be the typical opportunistic infections that we have to manage. So how to approach these patients? So when we approach these patients, we should go with a good history. As in every patient, we should talk about the history first. So a history of what is the nature of immunocompromised state. Why the person is immunocompromised, whether he's a diabetic, that's why he's immunocompromised, whether he is having some malignancy, or what is the cause of immunocompromise in this patient. Why? Because this will affect what type of organisms, what type of disease this patient might be manifesting. So we should know about the cause, how long the patient has been immunocompromised. Because suppose a patient is of HIV, so a long time HIV, he might be having very low CD4 count. So accordingly, we will have different organisms and different immunity levels. And what drug therapy the patient is taking, because we will see later that a lot of drug interactions are there while treating these patients. So we have to know all these things: what is the cause of immunocompromise, what is the duration, and what is the drug therapy patient has been. Then as usual, history of fever, what type of fever, what duration of fever, if any pattern is observed. Then usual localization signs, whether the patient is having GI involvement, whether the patient is having respiratory involvement or urinary bladder involvement, whatever it is. So usual localization symptoms should be asked for, but as I talked earlier, these may not be very well manifesting, but still if they are present, we should ask for. Since the usual localization signs are not very prominent, so even the impairment in the functional capacity of the patient or the functional status or cognitive impairment of the patient, that should be taken care of. If a patient was saying that he's having some fever and for last few days he is not having diet properly, or he's having decreased activity, feeling fatigued, tired, So even these things should be taken seriously and they should be investigated. Another thing is that skin rashes. A lot of fevers will manifest with skin eruptions that should be taken care of, and then past history of infections, any procedures, any indwelling catheters, interventions, that all should be After detailed history, we should do a detailed examination. Vitals itself will give a clue to you. My patient might be having some tachycardia or hypotension, tachypnea. All this should be recorded. Then a meticulous examination, right, of each and every organ of the body, right, from the skin, look for any rashes, eschar, herpes vesicles on the lips, oral cavity, we should look for candidiasis, necrotizing gingivitis, nasal cavity, and because these patients might be having just sinusitis, that is the cause of infection and fever. So mucormycosis, any discharge from the nose, look for the lymphadenopathy, cognitive impairment, and then the usual systemic examination done for any normal patient. So, as we discussed, that these patients may not be having very classically, clinically manifestations, so we have to do a thorough investigation. We may require a lot of investigations in these patients, and sometimes this simple fever can be a manifestation of a severe infection. So a whole lot of infections are required just to localize what infection the patient is having and where the infection is there. So routine investigations, then like CBC, ESR, everything should be done. And then special investigations like inflammatory markers, CRP, that can give, CRP may be high in the infections. Procalcitonin will give you a clue about the infection. Blood cultures, proper blood culture should be taken, and preferably 2 blood cultures should be taken from a different site. And like in a normal blood culture, if sometimes we find staph epidermidis, we say it might be just contamination. But as commensals also become pathogenic in these patients of immunocompromised nature, so we should look for all these things also. We should look seriously, and we should see whether this epidermidis is just a contamination or it is the pathologic organism here. Patients with serious impairment should have got done CSF studies, and then CSF should be targeted for all those infections like cryptococcal for Indian preparation. We require detailed radio imaging in form of X-rays, CT scans, MRIs may be required. If we find any site for biopsy, we should do, if we are looking for a lymph node, we should biopsy it and see what may be the cause, and various copies. So these are detailed investigation, but every investigation is not required in each and every patient. But we have to think that these patients require little more and detailed investigations. So accordingly, we should look for. Then there are some of the diseases will have impact on the cell-mediated immunity, and some of the diseases will have cause neutropenia or granulocytopenic. So we should be knowing that. It's like HIV, lymphomas, corticosteroid therapy. These will basically impact the cell-mediated immunity. And when the cell-mediated immunity is impacted, we will have more of bacterial infections or mycobacterial infections, viral infections, fungal infections, and protozoal. And we are just having neutropenia, then basically more of bacterial and fungal infections will be there. So we all know that as the CD4 count drops, lot of opportunistic infections in HIV are there. We should be knowing this, and HIV is very well understood, so I will just skip this thing. We'll discuss more about the solid organ transplant. When the organ transplant is there, initially the patient is in lot of immunosuppressants. So lot of chances of initial days after transplant, there are not many chances of new infections and new cause of fever in them. And as after the say 6 or 7 months, the infection decreases. Now this infection might be due to donor. The donor part itself was infected, that has caused the infection in the very first month after the organ transplant. And within the next 1 to 6 months, basically due to a lot of immunosuppressants, we have herpes infections, viral infection, nocardia, listeria, and fungal infection that should be looked for. And after the 6 months, if fever is there, It's more of the normal commensals like normal organisms like community acquired infections or infections due to long-term steroids which have given rise to CMV and aspergillus and fungi that should be investigated. Now, most transplant patients with a new onset fever should be evaluated in hospital unless and until the patient is appearing to be very stable, hemodynamically stable, not very sick, then he can be managed in the OPD basis or outpatient department. Otherwise, these patients should be admitted, and as we discussed, it should be drug-drug interaction should be noted down, because if we give new antimicrobials to these patients, they might be interacting with whatever drugs or immunosuppressants the patient was taking earlier. If patient is unhealthy, if patient is sick, then the patient should be admitted in ICU, and empirically antimicrobials, specifically the broad spectrum antibiotics, should be started. And we should also be looking that they might be having drug resistant organisms, because so many drugs and repeated fever infections, antibiotic therapies, they might be having drug resistant organisms that should be taken care of. And if any surgical abscess or surgical wound is there, that should be thoroughly managed surgically. Unless we manage that, remove that abscess, drain that abscess, the antibiotics will not be of much use. Another thing is like fever in neutropenic patients. As the ANC count decreases, the fever is there, and that may be very harmful, specifically in the patients with chemotherapy due to some malignancies. And they actually disturb the mucosal surfaces, and that becomes a lot of invasion by the organisms. So it is an oncologic emergency, and fever may be the only sign in this in serious infections. And if we don't treat them, we don't identify them, a lot of mortality might be there. Most common sites of infections are the GI, lung, sinuses, and we have to classify. If the patient is having neutropenia less than 500 for more than 7 to 10 days, then they are at very high risk of severe infection. If they are having ANC of more than 500 to 1000 and duration is less, duration is also important, duration of less than 7 days, then they can be classified as low risk patients. Again, in the first 1 to 2 weeks, most commonly are the bacterial infection, but after 2 weeks, if these things continue, of decreased neutropenia is there, then the risk of yeast, molds increases significantly. And initially, or in the earlier days, there used to be more of gram-negative bacteria such as Pseudomonas, E. coli, etc. But as more and more long-term catheterizations and long-term devices, implantations have been used, so more of gram-positive bacteria, specifically Staph aureus, Coag-negative Staph, Viridian streptococci are being found. So we have to look for the antibiotics. Initially it might be gram-negative, but these days gram-positive antibiotics are required. Early initiation of antibiotics is required, and anti-pseudomonal antibiotics should be given. And there are indications to when to add gram-positive antibiotics. Other thing is just as patients are neutropenic, so we can use filgrastim, and even antifungals are to be considered. Another immunocompromised patients are there, patients who are on biologicals, specifically patients of RA, ankylosing spondylitis, psoriasis. These patients are given TNF inhibitors, IL-16 inhibitors. So what they do is they decrease the cytokine level in the body, and due to decreased cytokines, there is high risk of reactivation of tuberculosis. And this risk is not equal in all the biologicals. Like in all TNF inhibitors, infliximab has the highest risk of reactivation of tuberculosis, whereas the etanercept has the least risk of tuberculosis. And the classical presentation of tuberculosis like fever, weight loss may not be very much evident, because again, already the immune system is suppressed due to these TNF inhibitors or biologicals. So the major caution that we take is that before initiating a biological for any such indication, we should investigate the patient thoroughly for any viral infections like HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and specifically the tuberculosis. In fact, the latent tuberculosis should also be investigated, and if present, that should be treated before starting the biologicals. And not only this, tuberculosis, even non-tuberculous mycobacterial infections and fungal infections can also be present in these patients on biologicals. The last thing, in a systemic lupus erythematosus or SLE patient, there can be fever. Now this fever can be due to simple infection in these patients, like in any other patient. And specifically, these SLE patients most of the times are on glucocorticoids or other immunosuppressants, so they are more likely to get infections. But apart from infection, there can be non-infectious causes that can be just a flare of the disease or increased disease activity that is causing the fever. So it is important to distinguish between the two, because if you think it is a flare of the disease and if you give more of immunosuppressant and it was not because of flare, it was because of infection, that infection will get flared up and patient might go into sepsis and can be mortal. So we have to distinguish between the two. It is difficult to distinguish. So we have to use indirect markers like CRP. It is more increased. It is increased in both infection and in disease activity, but in SLA, characteristically, it is seen that CRP is highly increased in infections compared to what it is increased in the disease flare. Like in RA, we say, rheumatoid arthritis, we say that CRP is increased in disease activity, but in SLE, CRP is increased only in the infections, highly increased in the infections. ESR will be increased in both the condition, whether it is a flare or infection. So we can use an ESR CRP ratio, and when the ratio is high, it can be due to the flare. And then other markers of flare are that we can have done the anti-dsDNA antibody levels that might be again high when there is flare of the disease. C3, C4 will be low in flare of the disease, and there may be other clinical manifestations of disease flare. So we should look and investigate for very thoroughly before treating any fever in SLE patient and look whether it is an infection or flare. So to summarize, fever in immunocompromised patients can be life-threatening. We have to keep a high index of suspicion, as the fever may be the only sign or symptom of the infection. Evaluated with extensive history, examination and investigations. Early treatment is required, more likely in ICUs with broad spectrum antibiotics, and prompt recognition of type and severity of host immune defect is critical for risk stratification. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Piyush Jain, for such a elaborative talk. Now, we have some questions.
With different intervals of time, at 2 blood cultures, same time should be taken, and preferably we should try to take multiple blood cultures.
And the role of how often should we go for sepsis markers like ESR, CRP, and negative markers like albumin?
So that when we are investigating any cause of fever, any patient of fever, we should get these markers done like CRP, procalcitonin. So they can be done as soon as the patient comes to us, and if the patient is not responding, we can repeat it and see whether these markers are increasing. So this might show that the infection. So PET CT, like we have to do a thorough investigations. Like if your patient working for a malignancy patient, that PO is okay, sir. For that, we should do all the routine investigations and these special investigations. Still, we are not able to localize the infection, and the patient is running fever in spite of giving empirically antibiotics. Then we should go for the PET CT. After, sir. Sir, if we see practically, we should do a.
No, I am talking of Harrison, because most of the person they don't recommend PET CT in fever. In Harrison, if you open the chart, there is a flow chart in Harrison. They recommend PET CT before normal CT.
Maybe, sir.
So, I just asked you because most of the physicians they recommend, they say, oh, PET CT, no, it is not for fever. And I
Then
will-
it is
It
for
should be done. It can be done.
It is for fever. But
And it should be done before
if we are suspecting something in the chest or in the abdomen, then we
Yes.
can go for CT first. But even if it, patient's complaint is pain or
See, sir, if we have a patient of
Everything was normal. Everything, I just found everything. I ordered from that.
नहीं but
नहीं पेट तो यूजली बाद में करते हैं
नहीं मैडम आजकल थी
sir, we should say in the
ठीक है
Indian-
और
नहीं CT abnormal is
and not just singly Montus test positive, we will not treat the latent tuberculosis. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying that single Montus test positive, we will not treat for the latent tuberculosis. We may start with the biologicals.
so I
We
think
can
the
have
time
the-
is
Yes, ma'am.
we are
You
late
can have the questions when the speaker comes down. You
and
need
to
to
summarize just to prevent और आपको इतनी सारी बीमारियों से बचना है इतनी सारी इन्वेस्टिगेशन से बचना है इतनी सारी दवाइयों से बचना है तो अपनी इम्यून बॉडीज को स्ट्रॉन्ग कीजिए बस दिस इज द समरी ऑफ द टॉपिक
Bilkul.
थैंक यू
So I now request our chairpersons to kindly felicitate our speaker.